Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Coming up, Germany, Hungary, Switzerland, you're all getting pumped in the summer. Youth or Druth, our youngsters getting a fair crack in our game. And CLYDE are sinking, but can McCall pull the bully wee tugboat around before it's too late? The fire is roaring here in the Scottish Football Show Tavern for episode 18. Yes, we need to try and beat the cold. My God, did it batter a few matches that didn't happen in the end. Only a handful did take place in the SPFL, but we're already thinking about summertime because if you haven't heard, wir fahren nach Deutschland, which is we're coming to Scotland, hopefully.
Coming to Germany, you mean?
Quiet you, I've not introduced you yet. So yes, joining me as usual from the hottest place on the planet, welcome the head of creative at Melbourne FC, Findlay Marks. How hot is it in Australia?
Not quite the hottest place on the planet, but it's very warm, so we're just coming into the proper summer period. 31 degrees it is in Melbourne today, so roasty toasty. Aye.
That's maybe a wee bit too hot. Maybe a wee bit too hot.
I think my perfect temperature is around about 22, 23 degrees. That's lovely. But Melbourne seems to be either 10 or 40. There's like nothing in between. So
oh, wow.
Takes a wee bit of getting used to.
Well, someone who has already booked his tickets to Germany, football author of Scotland's Swedish Adventure and writer for the famous Tartan Army magazine, John Bleasdale. Hello, John. How are you, pal?
I'm good. I'm in a pretty good mood after seeing the draw on Saturday. So, and being at the Scotland HQ Live event when it was all happening. So that was
superb.
Amazing day.
Was that with Gordon Smart and stuff like that? They were doing all that stuff for YouTube and whatnot.
Yeah, Gordon Smart and Amy Canavan, and they were joined by Craig Gordon and Mark Jennings. That's his name. Couldn't remember there.
Oh, he's great. He's really
he
good.
was good, I must say. And Scott McGill did his set at the end. That was and they had London Dyke. They cut to London Dykes for a quick interview with him, which went down very well. So, it was good. It was good fun.
So you are going to Germany. You are booked. Are you plane, train, or automobile?
I booked flights to Cologne via London, so I fly out on the 13th and I come back on the 27th. Although seeing the draw, we actually play our last game 4 days before, so I'll just have an extra 4 days and then I'll be home before the team.
Why not?
Hopefully,
take in a wee distillery or something like that, a wee brewery. That'd be lovely. Excellent. Right, let's get stuck into it. John, you'll like this first one in our little funny section that we do before we kick into the real meat and bones of the football. You must have had a wee laugh at Aberdeen in Helsinki after about, 60 minutes? So when it was 2-1, I think, just before they scored the equaliser, all the Aberdeen fans were getting their hands on some snow and throwing snowballs at the Helsinki players. Absolutely brilliant bullshittery from Scottish football fans.
It's not the first time Aberdeen fans have done this, because people who of a certain age will remember back in the 2001-2 season, the one time that Celtic lost under Martin O'Neill that season in the league, Alan Thompson, Stillian Petrov were getting hit by snowballs in the corner, and Aberdeen win that game 2-0. So it's not a new thing, but obviously it worked because we were 2-1 down at the time, and then we scored a few minutes later.
You've got history. It was so weird because the referee had to go to the fourth official and say, like, can you speak to them about it? It's like, well, you put all the snow up to their end. Like, you've only got yourselves to blame, lads.
It kind of felt like the whole vibe of it was a bit like, you've got like a substitute teacher and they can't really get control of the class, so they threaten to go to the headmaster.
Exactly. Finn, what else have we got?
I don't know if anybody else would have seen this from the Fort William versus Loch Ness FC in the North Caledonian League. Unsurprisingly, it was postponed as well, but it had, I think, one of the best pre-match posters I've ever seen. Obviously, with it being Fort William versus Loch Ness, they've called it the Monster Derby. And
I'm looking at it now. It's so funny.
What somebody's done is they've taken what is fairly graphic fantasy art of a giant sea monster coming out the sea, and they photoshopped some Fort William players and fans onto the soldiers that are trying to fight it off, and they've got ropes over its head and everything. It's dramatic and amazing, and I'm 100% here for it.
It's great artwork. It's actually really well made.
It's really well done, the Photoshop, yeah.
Some of it's better than like proper broadcast level stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously we're going to speak about the draw in a wee minute, but obviously Steve Clarke was in attendance when the draw was taking place, and he just decided to take a wee sneaky selfie of the trophy. It's almost like your old dad just going to a museum. It's just like your old dad going, look where I am, son.
100%. And it's also it's abysmally framed, but you're absolutely right. The first thing I saw is like, how does nobody under the age of about 50 know how to take a selfie properly, to do it at an angle or whatever that looks decent and flattering to them? Because it's totally the kind of photograph you get for your dad, and all it would say is, look where I am, or a bit of a change for my cup of coffee this morning, you know, like some rank dad patter kind of at the bottom of it, and then just this photo. It's like, you're with the European Championship trophy. Smile, at least.
See the photo? I've actually got it as one of my group chat admin profile photos. That's how much I loved it. It's just genius, and it's just listen, it takes a lot for Steve Clarke to smell. At least he's been consistent, although, as we're going to talk about, he cracked a smile when he saw the draw, so fair enough.
Just before we do that as well, I had to sneak this one in because I just forgot about it in this, but St Johnstone obviously played Celtic at the weekend, and Craig Levein has recently been installed as the St Johnstone manager. But obviously at Sky Sports, it's quite tough. I don't know the protocol or the workflows and stuff like that happen there. But Craig Levein, his photo, they normally, when they do the team formations, they'll have the manager photo there next to the team. But what they've done is they've clearly, whoever do graphics for Sky, have taken Craig Levein's head and they've put it on the previous manager, Stephen McLean's body. It's great for Craig Levein. It looks like he's lost about 5 stone.
Looking trim. Yep.
But if you see, hopefully, Finn, you can stick it on the actual edit for the YouTube version of this. But yeah, it looks he's looking well. Oh, Craig.
I mean, it was quite funny to see, but I think there's kind of a serious point to be made on that, because it's not like they've not had any turnaround time. Like, there's been an international break and they've had 3 weeks to sort it out. I just find that it's just kind of indicative, I think, of the level to which maybe Sky treat the Scottish game. Just speaking to recent experience here with my work at Melbourne City, we changed managers recently. The previous manager was let go on a Tuesday night, new manager installed on the Wednesday morning, and we had a game live on TV on the Friday night. But in that time, the A-League still were able to send people down, do the full photo shoot, get all the graphics done and everything like that.
I don't know. I'd maybe defend Sky a little bit. I think it's one of those where, like, the club may provide a lot of the material to be used, and maybe the club just haven't done something yet. I don't know, but we don't know what's going on in the background.
The dogs bark and the caravan passes. The caravan keeps moving. The caravan keeps going.
So the draw for Euro 2024 took place on Saturday. Scotland are going to open the competition on Friday the 14th of June because we've drawn the hosts, Germany, from Pot A. That's absolutely class, in my opinion. But before we delve into all of that, the other teams we've got is Hungary and Switzerland. So it's a pretty tough group, guys. But Finn, is this a group you're happy with, or is this verging on a group of
slightly stronger than a group of death? Honestly, I think all things considered, it's a pretty good group, I think, because first and foremost, let's just get the big headline out of the way. To not just be at the tournament and to be playing the hosts there, but to be opening the tournament. Because the thing is, like, you know, we all know when it's the Euros or the World Cup, everybody is watching the opening game because the fever that's been built up over the months and months and months and years, even in between tournaments, it's frenetic. And at that point, everybody's just so ready for the tournament to start. And for me, like, we've been away from these major tournaments for so long. I know we were at the last Euros, but it was a bit of a false start. 2 of the games were at Hampden and, you know, it's no fans there. So this to me is like the real thing. This is like the proper return. And to have it the same way that we did at France 98, playing the opening game. The eyes of the world are on us. It's just going to be absolutely magnificent. And what I really loved actually in the BBC Scotland had gone around the managers of the other national teams, and Julian Nagelsmann, the German manager, had said it's going to be quite an emotional occasion, I think, for German fans in Munich to watch their national team open the tournament as the hosts. But also he was thrilled that it was against a team like Scotland. And he also said they've got very emotional fans too. So I think he's looking forward to the spectacle. It's just going to be, whether you're lucky enough to get tickets or just be in Munich or be in Germany, like it's just going to be phenomenal. As to the rest of the group, I was quite happy with the draw, to be honest. 2 difficult games, but also 2 winnable games. I don't know if there's an enormous amount between ourselves and Hungary and Switzerland in terms of recent form. I think historically Switzerland are probably seen as the second seed in that group, even though they were actually in pot 4. Hungary, obviously, historically an incredible team, but haven't really done much on a world map for 50 odd years, whatever. I know they were at Euro 2016 and they've been at a couple of other ones, but I'm hopeful. And I think we've also got 3 great cities as well. When we had Derek Gray on the podcast, he specifically called out Cologne, or Köln as he calls it with the proper German, as a brilliant city to be in. Munich speaks for itself, but also Stuttgart's a great city as well. So I think we've got 3 great games in 3 great cities. It's going to be an amazing month.
It will be an amazing month. Just to pick on your kind of, maybe, I think these games are harder than people think. Hungary finished top of their group. Let's not forget, 18 points and were unbeaten. Switzerland, you did mention that they have a history at major competitions. They have reached the last 16 of the last 4 World Cups. These are strong sides, John. But you're going to be there, so you're just going to enjoy it, all of it, no matter what the result, right?
No, the intention is to get through it. Of course, I'm going to enjoy the occasion, but listen, Andrew, I was listening to you on the Hampton Road podcast, and between you, Callum, and Andy Barge, listening to it on the way to the draw, you guys seem to have been picking, I don't want this team, that team, for about 16 of the 24 teams. Try talking Scotland up. I mean, we're in a good place right now. We've got some good players playing at a good level. We've just come through a good qualifying campaign. And yes, I don't think, to be fair, there isn't much between any of the 4 sides in the group, because you've got a German team that isn't what they were. Hungary beat England 4-0 last year, but then they had some pretty dodgy results in their qualifying campaign, although they topped it. And Switzerland, they stumbled in what looked like a pretty average group that I think Scotland would have won. So I think we can be optimistic about our chances in the draw. And just talk us up a wee bit more. I think this is where we're at right now.
Yes, John.
I guess the old pessimism, to be fair, creeps in, to be fair. But I think we're in a position we can try and talk ourselves up a bit more.
I think that's fair. One thing we were all unanimous on was we all wanted Germany. And I think that to play the hosts in their backyard in a major competition, and let's not forget, we've mentioned it many times, the last Euros just wasn't a proper Euros. It being in the UK, playing most of our games in Hampden, it was great to be back at a major competition. But this feels like it's proper now. This feels like it's right, not just because of we're going away, we're getting a big trip and stuff like that, but this Scotland team is more mature. It's well-rounded. There's some real quality in key areas, but the key point really is we've seen how bad it can be when we don't have our key players, when we don't have Tierney, Robertson. Do you think our squad is strong enough overall, if things go a little bit wrong, that we can handle it, Finn, or does it matter? I think this competition will just be enough of a catalyst for everyone to be at their top level.
Obviously, we want Tierney and Robertson and those kind of players available. Of course we do. There's a great mentality in the squad, though, and no matter which 11 men are taken to the field for Scotland, I think they're going to be grabbing it with both hands. Looking at comparable teams, the likes of Austria, Czechia, that kind of level of team, we've played them and beaten them. And we beat Spain in qualifying. Like, that is a big thing as well, that these teams will be going, like, you can't take Scotland lightly. I think all 3 managers as well, when they were getting their thoughts on the draw, highlighted Scotland's defensive setup. Not in that we'd play defensively, but just they're really hard to break down. They're a well-knitted group together. So I don't think any of them will be taking us lightly as well. I also kind of think historically Scotland's biggest problem is usually playing teams we think we should beat. Iran, Peru, Morocco. I think there's been so many instances where we've played these teams thinking, well, that's the team that we should beat. And actually, we end up playing the likes of the Netherlands getting to the World Cup final while we beat them. Very unlucky to lose to Brazil in 98 with an own goal from Tommy Boyd when we played really well. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like if there's that level of slightly feeling like we're the underdogs going into all three of the games, I think that might go in our favour. And I just think these boys will be chomping at the bit to give a good account of themselves going into this tournament.
When you think about the way that they've brought, I think it was in 2016 where they brought the rule where the best third place team can progress. So if you think hard about it, 4 points is probably enough to guarantee your next stage. So where do you think, John, the 4 points could come from in this group?
First 2 games.
I love it.
Why not?
Second game's in Cologne as well, isn't it? So
yeah, I mean
Switzerland, isn't it?
Yeah, Switzerland and Cologne, which is handy for me, obviously, because I booked my flights and accommodation in Cologne. And I'll probably stay in Cologne when we're playing Stuttgart as well, because the train links will be good enough for me to get back. But Munich, I've decided to get accommodation for that. I got it before it went even crazy, as you can imagine. No, I think yes, I'm looking forward to Switzerland. There's almost a bit of Craig Brownism in the way this has come about when you think about it. Last World Cup we began to we're doing it this time, and then in the last team we beat at a major finals was Switzerland, and we've got them again. So is Mr. Brown looking down at us when this draw's come out? I don't know, but I think we'll come through this group. Whether it'll be second or third, I don't know. Possibly even top of group, who knows? But I think we're good enough to qualify.
Finn and John, you've done very good to turn my kind of... I've not been too pessimistic. I like to think I'm maybe more realistic. But if anyone thinks that Scotland should go into this group with confidence or cautiousness, I think it has to be confidence. Like you cannot say or be worried about anything. So even if anyone do underestimate us, that is exactly what we are hoping for, is to be underestimated. I think that makes perfect sense. And I really do hope that this is the first group of Scotland players that can get us past a group stage at a major competition, because that would just be totally deserving of the job that Steve Clarke's done and deserving of the players who have taken the responsibility and what they've done over the last 5 years. It's deserving of them to do something really special.
I also think there's something quite poignant in the fact that you look at some of the great Scotland teams that went to tournaments historically, and we've had some of, not just some of the best players from like Britain or Europe, some of the best players of all time really have played for Scotland at various points. Kenny Dalglish, Dennis Law, like all of these players. But we were kind of almost never more than the sum of our parts. You could look to these squads and we had unbelievable players who at club level were sensational. Hansen and Souness and Dalglish and all of these players, like they were incredible, but they never quite did it at tournaments. And I think it would actually be quite interesting, quite fitting that the squad that might do it, the squad that qualifies out of a group stage for the first time in our history, are a squad of just excellent players, but they're a squad. That is what they are. We've got great players and we've got exceptional players and some world-class players on that level, but we're a team. And I just think it would be incredible that it's the team that's got us there, and you don't necessarily see anybody on a plinth above anybody else. Yeah, we've got Tierney, we've got McGinn, we've got Robertson or whatever, McTominay, but we've also got guys like Kenny McLean, and these guys just go out there and play with their heart and soul.
An interesting carrot to kind of dangle in front of Scottish football fans who maybe wanted a crack at England again. If England win their group, they would probably face either the third place team from Group D, E or F in the last 16. And then if Scotland were to finish second in Group A, that would set up a quarter-final clash with Scotland. How good would that be? England fans would probably be like, that's amazing. But I'm like, that's amazing. I would love that.
You're the only one that is so desperate for this Scotland-England game. I mean, I'd be fine with it later in the competition. I'm glad it's not happened in the group stage. I mean, to be honest, the group itself is one of those in the middle scenarios. There were better groups that we could have had, and think possibly would have been easier, but there were harder ones. Like, see the one with Spain and Italy, and that would have been a tough group to be in. So this is kind of the middle roads. But I'm glad we're avoiding England for now. But yeah, save them for later.
some news to round up now from around Scottish football. And we all heard that ViaPlay were pulling out of practically everywhere and going back home to Sweden or the Nordics just in total. But Premier Sports have agreed to buy back the ViaPlay UK sports business. They sold it back in 2022, which was last year, for 30 million. And they're probably going to get it back at a chopped price, which is, I think, really for Scottish football fans who like watching their games on the telly, it's probably going to not affect them at all, because it will be the exact same punditry team. I would expect it would be all the same people delivering the great job that they do. So I think the most important point out of this, John, is that the football is still going to be televised.
It's the typical Scottish football story, isn't it? You know, you get Viaplay taking over from Premier Sports, and then Premier Sports take it back. Only in Scottish football could that type of thing happen.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. But I know there's a lot of people still peed off about it because it's still a subscription service and all the rest. I think they were hoping that, from Scotland national team point of view, they were hoping that someone like Channel 4 would take on the national team games and stuff like that. But listen, I mean, Viaplay and Premier, whenever they've employed this, in TNT, when they get that group of, Rowan Hamilton commentator, Emma Dawes presenter, and your pick of the pundits, they always seem to do a very good job, and so I'm glad that that's continuing as well, because that output is tremendous, and not much more to say about that.
It's one of those, Finn, where you kind of just hope that, well, why is it just going back to the same people? Why couldn't someone else come in from? I suppose Viaplay was quite left field. But, you're looking for some serious money to be coming into Scotland, because it deserves it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we've talked about that ad nauseum. I think maybe it's just a case of it being logistically the easiest thing, just to hand it back to the people that were in charge of it before. The thing I find, it's so Scottish football, right? You're absolutely right, John, is the fact that I don't know if they'll change the name of the cup again, but there's the very real possibility that teams have started competing in one cup, ended up getting into the later rounds with it being called a completely different thing, and then reaching the final of it being called something that it was at the start of the season again. I don't know if that's ever happened in world football before, where one cup's had three sponsors technically in one season. But it's just very indicative of where we are and how we sell our game. As always, it's kind of like I think a quick pound to the SPFL or the SFA appeals more than looking after or trying to look after the fans' interests. I think they see any money as good money, rather than it being trying to find the best deal for clubs as stakeholders and for the fans, more importantly. It just seems to be a secondary issue. I think supporters and the amount of money that they've got to pay. It's kind of no secret that fans in the UK in general, but Scotland's even worse off than England because we have an extra subscription service, have to pay through the nose more than any other country in the world, pretty much, in order to watch their teams, to support their teams, and to watch their leagues. And I think that's something that needs addressed. But with a lot of these contracts, we're locked into them for a number of years, so I don't see it changing anytime soon, sadly.
Sticking with the financials then, because this is a really interesting report that came out from FC20, actually, who made more money from selling beer than from selling players over the past year. So this came from their 2022-23 financial report. Their food and drink industry made a profit of 6 million, majority of which was from beer.
I mean, that's impressive. That's impressive, right?
So they made 3.75 million euros, I should say as well. This is in euros. So 3.75 million from player sales. And it just, I mean, I know it's a tired argument, this, and debate, but Scottish football and British football, I know you can buy alcohol in stadiums in England and probably Wales as well, but you can't take it into, where you're sitting or where you're standing and whatnot. You can still buy it in the stadium. But in Scotland, that doesn't exist. And are we really, I know the answer, but it's good to hear from probably you, John, because we probably haven't heard you on it. But having alcohol being sold at stadiums, maybe not necessarily allowed to take it into the ground, are we missing a real financial trick here?
I mean, it all started because of a riot at a Scottish Cup final in 1980 between Celtic and Rangers, which just seems to be the cause of everything. And but I mean, that was what 44 years ago. I mean, sure, there's a time for review. I wouldn't necessarily abolish the law straight away, but maybe do like a pilot event at some of the lower league clubs as a starting point, and see how they get on. Because I know there's some clubs that have like, their social club bars right next to stadium and stuff like that. So why not give that opportunity? Because and I've seen a lot of fans saying that they would love to have a drink at the ground. But listen, I'm someone that doesn't really drink much, so I can take it or leave it. But I know for some people, a lot of Scottish football fans, a wee pint before the game is important to them. But they feel more inclined to have a drink somewhere else, and then they end up coming in the ground like if there's one or two more. Why not? They'd be willing to pay that wee bit extra, even for a possible watered down tenants, um, because they know the money's going to the club. And for some clubs, that could be a game changer for them, especially when we've just come out of COVID and stadiums were shut for a year. Clubs are still trying to make back money, and we're trying to get money in the game. I think it's some of these reviews, but as I say, a pilot event, first of all, at a few clubs, and then roll it into the bigger leagues, I think would be the sensible option.
They did actually. I know that Celtic did kind of trial something in one of their stands where they were allowed to. They got permission to sell alcohol, but it was something like 6 hours before the actual match where fans had to turn up. I might be getting that slightly wrong, but it was an obscene amount of time before the match kicked off. So you had to go in, get your ticket, get through the turnstile, and then you could have a beer, but then you had to stop when it got closer to the games. It was a bit odd, but at least they've trialed it, and probably as a kind of test case of fan behaviour. But Finn, we've spoken at length on this podcast about how can we, boost revenue streams? How can we make fan culture way more enjoyable for the masses? And when you look at, we often try to mirror or look at ourselves to clubs who are of a similar size or countries similar size. This is so much money that we could be making, and it sounds like kind of a conservative way of looking at it, but that's important to clubs, and people will support their clubs.
100%, and John makes a really good point, I think, as well, in the length of time it's been since the alcohol ban was brought in is almost absurd. Like 45 years, none of us were either born or we were very, very young when that happened. So you've got generations of football fans that have never experienced it. John makes the point about it being off the back of an Old Firm Cup final, and that always gets bigger headlines, and there was a lot of trouble. It's not to say that they were the only sets of fans. There was quite a problem with the alcohol and football hooligan culture at that time in the late 70s and certainly through the 80s. I mean, we saw it more so probably in England, but we had our own problems too. But societally, we've changed a lot. I think Scots' relationship to alcohol is still quite a strong one, but I think generationally it's completely different now than when it was 45 years ago in our parents' generation or our parents' generations. So I think it's absolutely right for the time to do that. And like you say, it's not just because we want to see a reversal in what are very draconian laws, and I think infringements on people's things. There's a gaping financial hole. Like Scottish football does not have its problems to seek when trying to find revenue streams for our clubs. It's again especially lower down the football pyramid, and even outside of the Old Firm, if people are a bit like, oh, we don't want to see the scenes of the police, or like we don't want to see a repeat of the scenes of the 1980 Cup final, even though it was almost 50 years ago with the Old Firm. Fine, don't let Old Firm fans do it. They're not the clubs that need the additional revenue coming in there, but maybe the other clubs in the top flight, or certainly lower down, maybe Championship and below, trial it doing those things, because it is a total untapped resource. And again, brilliant point, John. Fans are desperate to give their money to their clubs. They want to invest in it. And if you give fans the chance of going to a Wetherspoons maybe in a town centre before, or going to your stadium a bit earlier to have a few pints before the game and see your pals there, I know which one I'd rather choose, and I'm sure a lot of fans would feel the same way too.
It's funny because in the National League down in England, they don't allow drink in the stadiums either. But if you go into Tier 7, just outside the National League North and South divisions, You have clubs like Maidstone who do their own beer, or Dulwich Hamlet, who are actually now in the National League South, but they used to sell their own beer, make their own beer, and sell that in the ground, and you'd go and enjoy it in the terraces. It was great fun. My local team's Hanwell Town, and the beer they sell is fantastic. Like, for a wee club, a tiny wee club, they're selling, good Guinness, good Stellas, good, But this is the thing; it's a money spinner, and anything that we can add to the coffers of our clubs who are struggling can only be a good thing. You mentioned a few laws, and the SFA, and SPFL thinking any money's good money. Is there laws that we should be bringing in, Finn, when it comes to young players? We've had, there was a really interesting tweet this week. It was the young team who actually posted this on Twitter. They do a really good job, actually, of highlighting a lot of young players and what they're doing right now and stuff like that. So give them a wee follow on Twitter. That would be really cool. They basically said only 2 Scots aged 21 or younger started in the Scottish Premiership this weekend. Pretty bad when you think of the Scottish talent in a Scottish national team that's about to go to Germany. Should the SFA be getting more involved, John, do you think, as well, in something like this?
It's a very worrying trend. I mean, I'll use my own club as an example. Aberdeen, I mean, we have signed a ridiculous amount of foreign players, and it's stagnating the young Scottish talent within our squad. I think there was Brown Ferguson put out some stats last season. I can't remember them because I don't have them at hands, but Aberdeen were one of the highest in terms of not playing so many Scottish players, which is a real concern because you want to, as much as an Aberdeen fan, you want this team to win, no matter who's in the park. At the same point, you want some kind of identity as well, and we've had a good tradition over the years of bringing through good jumpers, from, let's say, Ian Jess to, in more recent years, Lewis Ferguson, although we got him at a young age from Hamilton. And you want to see that continuing, and you just don't want to see that being blocked. And are the foreign players that are coming over any better? That's a big matter of debate as well. And whilst the Scotland team is doing very well just now, it does make you worry about 10 years from now. Are we going to be back in the position we were under the George Burley, Craig Levein era? I mean, it's actually ironic that Ben Dokes went down to Liverpool, and all right, he's not started a league game yet, but he's probably had more chances of getting in their first team than he would have done at Celtic at this age, because Celtic don't play many young players either. Tierney was an exception rather than the rule. So yeah, there's no club in the top flight that's an exception to this at the moment, and I'd like to see something brought back, but how you get around that with with employment law, etc., I don't know.
It's interesting you brought up Ben Doak, because I remember when he came on to play for Celtic, I think he was 16, and it was very much, you got the feeling of, is Ben Doak just being played to convince him to stay, or is Ben Doak being given the impression that's the case, and therefore he's just decided, well, I'm going to take my chances and go to Liverpool? Or is he being told, you're going to be a first team starter? Is there a little bit of cloak and dagger with this? We'll play you, and you'll maybe get more chance next season, or you can go down to Liverpool and be surrounded by Mo Salah, Trent Alexander-Arnold, some of these top world-class players. What is better? What is better?
It's a really difficult call to make, and I think it really comes down to the type of player as well, because not all players can go down like Ben Doak to a club with the size and stature of Liverpool and thrive. I think it kind of goes both ways. I do think it needs addressed. I think it's a real issue, and I do think, and I don't know how you change this, I think you need managers that are not just relying on circumstance and panicking to play young players. I think there needs to be some sort of culture where the managers that are coming through in our game are prioritizing youth to a level of like, well, how do you develop players? Not just, I need them to be ready for the first team kind of thing. Because we've got amazing coaches at all levels in the game. And I think there should be more between that last gap, which is a player can be really good at like under 15s, under 17s, under 18s, development squad, not quite good enough for the first team. And that shouldn't be the case. We're wanting to bring through players that will be able to step up to that. And not all players arrive as ready-made professionals at 18. you look at some of the players that have had great Scotland careers in recent seasons. I always think of Paul Hartley for this. Paul Hartley was not like an amazing player at 21 or whatever. It was when he was like 27, 28, he really came to the full of his potential and broke into the national team. So it does happen to players that way. And I think we always just have maybe slightly high expectations of players coming in at that young level. I think one of the things we could do is change the regulations to incentivize it. So there are potential money rewards or other incentives to clubs if they play a certain amount of young players or have a certain amount of young players on their benches or give them minutes during a season and incentivize it that way. Could be a way of doing it, but I don't know. It's a massive problem, I think, and one that I don't know if the clubs, especially on the top flight, take as seriously as they need to be taken.
I think the current league setup doesn't help either. You know, if you think about it, I mean, it's so cutthroat. Like, for example, Dundee United were in a relegation battle last season. Were they going to throw in a 17, 18-year-old in a relegation battle? No chance. Or Celtic going to play someone like that in a title battle? No chance. Same with teams who are going for Europe. And there's not as if there's many end of season games that are classified as meaningless today, because that's when you would probably try blooding in these players. That's when you would likely see Aberdeen play a 16-year-old hopeful, or a Hearts play a 17-year-old hopeful. That's the kind of thing. You'll see them in those kind of games. You won't see them in an Edinburgh Derby, etc. And I think that I'm not advocating meaningless games in the Scottish Premiership by stretch of imagination, but there has to be a way of introducing these in. And also, the managerial culture isn't helping right now. You know, managers have hopes of these players and then they're sacked because they've had 2 bad results in a row and things like that. Needs to change. But it's just the culture we're living in. It's a difficult one to address, but maybe incentivised. I don't know, but clubs will feel blackmailed in that respect too.
There's a really excellent documentary. It was one of the BT Sport films, and it was a really good friend of mine who directed it, a guy called Tom Boswell. But this was based on a Michael Calvin book. The film is called No Hunger in Paradise, and it kind of follows. I don't know if you've seen it, but it kind of follows ex kind of childhood football stars in academies and who have like been promised the world at academies, and it's not quite worked out. And the kind of idea is that some academies keep players and give them new contracts, but they know that they're not going to make it in the big time. They know that they're literally just there to be almost squad fodder for the players that they really have their eye on, that they think are the real prospects that are going to come through. And this film, No Hunger in Paradise, was a BT Sport film. It's really, really well executed. Some great interviews in it. And I think it was actually Brentford were in it when they spoke about actually getting rid of their academy because they didn't believe that it was doing the right thing for the local community, which was really interesting. I'm sure they've got an academy again, but a good film to add to your list if you haven't already.
We can't be having that, mate. You better get your finger out all right and make sure that you get the results.
Right, CLYDE are one of the oldest clubs in Scottish football, but their existence in the SPFL is under threat. They sit rock bottom of League Two and they're actually onto their second manager of the season as well. Things are looking bleak, shall we say, for the Bully Wee, who were formed in 1877. Ian McCall is the new man at the helm of this historic club, but after losing his first game in charge, which was 4-0 to East Fife, it leaves them with only 1 win after 13 games. Here to explain it all and try and bring some positivity to all this bleak news, potentially, is the host of the CLYDE FC podcast, and he's also the CLYDE media correspondent, Paul Shanks. Paul, thanks for joining us. And sorry, a bleak intro, but hopefully you can explain it all for us. How are you, first and foremost?
Well, I was doing fine until your intro, Andrew, to be honest. But it's facts that have been driven home just about every kind of Saturday at the moment. And trying to explain it is a near impossible task. When you get relegated from any league, I think everyone expects the next season to be that bit better, that bit easier. It's certainly not been the case for CLYDE. Our woes have continued pretty much since last September onwards. And yeah, as you say, things are bleak in the extreme. Hopefully, with Ian McCall coming on board and Neil Scally as well, we're hopeful that come January, he gets a bit of business done to hopefully turn the way this season's going. Is pretty horrific. Last season was just horrific. I mean, absolutely horrific. And last season's squad, whilst probably not one that would be pushing for promotion in League One, certainly should have been a lot more competitive in trying to stay in the division. We did change the manager in November. We parted ways with Danny Lennon after 5 years at the club. And Danny had a great term with the Bully that soured at the end because of we went on a run of 10 or 11 straight defeats.
So he left. Who came in after Danny? Was it Duffy?
Yeah, it was eventually Jim Duffy after a kind of short kind of spell with Alan Moore as interim charge. And at early doors, everyone was kind of thinking and hoping that Jim Duffy would come in, be a bit more pragmatic in his approach and make it difficult to beat. We had some okay performances. We did pick up a couple of victories, but it was always one eye, even at that stage, it was one eye on the playoffs at the end of the season, making sure that we finished ahead of Peterhead, who somehow managed to have an even worse season than ourselves, which is quite some going. And we actually kind of headed into the playoffs in fairly decent nick. We picked up some good wins. We beat Montrose, Edinburgh City towards the tail end of the season. We dealt well with East Fife in the playoffs. But what did kill us eventually was injuries. I mean, we were missing 6, I think, first-team players. We're into the final itself against a kind of buoyant Annan team. And it all just kind of fell apart in the second leg. We'd used all our subs by half-time. Rico Katongo had suffered a horrific leg break. And it just felt like that was it. That was it. It was the season in a nutshell in 45 minutes.
Tough. Really tough, obviously, Annan Athletic getting promoted from that tie. So Jim Duffy actually moves upstairs, and then Brian McLean, the former player, comes in charge. That ended as well. That was a very short spell, as was Jim Duffy again, up in the boardroom level. I suppose it's all kind of just been a mess from last season a wee bit.
Yeah, that's the polite way of putting it, Andrew. I think there was merits behind the decision to keep Jim Duffy on in that capacity, provided that Jim took the role up in what it's defined to do. Now, what it became clear, and I don't think I'm speaking out of term here, I do believe that the board have put this out there, so I think I'm safe to say it, that it became clear that Jim perhaps was not ready to take that full step back. And I think the roles were overlapping where they shouldn't have or didn't need to. And it perhaps just put us a wee bit further back than we were wanting to be at the start of the season in particular. Subsequently, to then bring in someone with the experience and the track record as Ian McCall, I think is a massive, massive coup.
You're right to allude to maybe the level that Ian McCall's coming from, because I think it's kind of beyond doubt that he's, with the greatest of respect, a manager that's probably capable and is capable. He's shown it to be operating at a level probably around the Championship or even the top flight. You know, he's been there too. So I think coup's the right words. That's just, when I saw the appointment, I was like, wow, that is a big thing.
Definitely.
How's it gone down with the Clyde supporters? Because obviously his history with Thistle is quite extensive. So that's quite an interesting move to make, to go from Maryhill to Broadwood. But you must be excited, because I think, you know, you kind of couldn't have picked or imagined anybody better qualified with a track record, who's, as you're saying, got that experience as well of moulding squads and using young players and the resources that he's got to incredible effect, because the time is running out for Clyde, isn't it, this season?
Absolutely. And I was very surprised as to how, perhaps not unanimous, but I would say that it was largely positive. I was expecting a wee bit more, it was with them. But at the same time, so was Danny Lennon. I mean, Danny Lennon was a well-regarded player for Thistle. But those that maybe had their doubts probably just looked at the league table. And as you say, the clock's ticking here. You have to go for what is the best, regardless of football tribalism or anything else. Ultimately, if he comes in and Clyde Football Club start winning matches, nobody's going to care where he's played or managed his football. They'll be singing his name come the end of the season. I can guarantee you that.
Ian McCall is one of these managers who has been around for such a long time, but he's made such a huge mark as well. And I do hope that he can do this at Clyde. He's very well regarded in turning around the careers of like Stephen Dobie and even Lawrence Shankland when he was at Ayr. He turns players' kind of fortunes around, and with it being such a young squad, I do wonder if this is the right place for him to really make a mark. But you said it already, it's such a big job. How fearful and how impacting is this on the area if Clyde were to go down further?
All the kind of different aspects around the club just now, everything's up in the air, and that's on the field and off the field. I mean, that's been the case for the best part of nearly 4 decades, to be quite frank. You're going back to the 80s, really, since we left Shawfield. But ultimately, we are a homeless football club. I mean, that's it. We are a homeless football club, bottom of the SPFL, that somehow managed to convince Ian McCall to come in. Probably the biggest project that he has ever probably undertaken. Will he be able to turn the fortunes round of the squad that we currently have? I very much hope so. I do believe, despite our mince points tally, I'm trying to choose my language here, there is talent there. It's just, these guys probably need to admit themselves that they've not done enough. And that goes for younger and experienced players. So it's not just up to Ian to bring out the best in them. It's up to about themselves to actually stand up to the plate, really, as well, and go, do you know what? We are making the same mistakes time and time again. So it's about time we take some ownership and fix it.
I just want to finish on a positive note, because one man who's well known at the club and was instrumental in bringing Ian McCall to Clyde, Alan Maitland, I believe he is joining the club again as chairman. Is that right?
He's joining the board. So
joining the board,
Alan
right.
will be, provided he gets voted on by the owners, he'll be heading up the football department.
And he's a massive man around the area, isn't he?
Oh, he's huge. Alan Maitland was the last Clyde manager to manage us to a title. But what he did do was a wee bit deeper than that. He completely changed where the club were and put us on a trajectory that almost saw us reach the top flight. And that all started when Alan Maitland and Ronnie McDonald came into the club. We were sitting, we just narrowly avoided relegation from the old second division, now League One. He came in and they did what was called the Junior Revolution. He brought all these players, your Mark McLaughlin's, your Jack Ross's, all these guys who nobody had heard of. Nobody, not even Clyde fans, were like, who are these clowns? Like, what are you doing to our football club? Laughing stock, people, the press were all like, Clyde for relegation, absolute muppets, what they're playing at. Won the title the next season, playing some swashbuckling football, for want of a better phrase. It was like we're winning games 4-3, 6-3, 7-1. It was just, you score 4, we'll score 7. Cool, no bother. It didn't end on brilliant terms when he left to go to Accies. But then you look, after he went to Accies and Ronnie McDonald went with him, look at the trajectory that Hamilton Accies then went on.
Mm-hmm.
They went on to have one of the best youth academies that Scottish football seen in a long, long time. And that's the hope. There's a different atmosphere, I think, now with Alan coming back in. He's got a lot of work to do in that, but I think having him, Ian McCall, and Neil Scally, I don't think we can underestimate him coming with Ian McCall as well. Did you say it's a positive? I think it's a real positive. Alan Maitland will have no issues getting voted on back onto the board of the football club. And he will drive change. He will drive the club forward. Kicking and screaming, but he will do it.
Regrets? No, it's good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
I do hope Clyde stay up, man. They feel like they should be mainstays of Scottish football, even if it's in the lower leagues. Like,
they're just synonymous with Scottish football. Like, if you like football and you're in Scotland, you know about Clyde. You know patches of their history or whatever. But even outside of Scotland, I think you know Clyde.
It's one of those interesting cases, I think, in British football where you just see that, you know, that stuff that works in other sports, especially franchise sports, like in the States, how many of those sports teams literally moved across the country because it's like, well, we're not making enough in St. Louis, so we'll move to LA or something like that. But it just doesn't work, especially lower down the leagues, because football clubs in Scotland and the UK in a wider sense are just, they're so intrinsic and so woven into the fabric of the societies they come from. You can kind of understand, and maybe with that mentality that I think was maybe around a lot in Scotland in kind of like the 50s, 60s, where they were trying to build new towns and new areas, and places like Glenrothes and Cumbernauld and Livingston and all that kind of thing. That expansion and like, oh, we should move one of the sports teams out there. You can see where the idea was there, but you know, they're an institution of Scottish football, Clyde, and it's been proven through time, I think, that it was just such a dreadful idea to take them away from Glasgow, away from their roots and from that community, and kind of plonk them in the outskirts. I think if it's on the cards that they might come back to Glasgow, it would be amazing.
Okay, right. My thanks to Finn and John, and also Paul Shanks from CLYDE FC podcast. If you're listening to this now, that's absolutely class. Thanks so much. You should tell your friends though, or else I will find you. I have a very particular set of skills, but I will make them get involved, share it and subscribe it. But you should just do that now. Why not? Finn, we're on YouTube, TikTok, all that social media bollocks. That's class. But John, absolutely brilliant to have you through the whole thing. It's been absolutely brilliant. Really good. Hope you enjoyed Germany, but I'm sure we'll have you back on. And just before we go, what's your book called again? Your new book that you've got coming out?
Yeah, so the new book, which will be out the 27th of May in 2024, is We're Going to Wembley, Scotland's Euro 96 story. It's co-written by myself and Neil Doherty, and we're very much looking forward to that coming out. So, and it'll be hopefully hitting the airports as Scotland fans are on their way to Düsseldorf or Cologne, etc.
Let's go and listen to something else now. Bye.